How many times over the last 10 years have the Pakistani government officials told us, no, Osama bin Laden is here in Afghanistan? How many times have the Afghanistani officials tell us, no, he's somewhere here, Waziristan perhaps, in the mountainous region here? It turns out tonight, and let's take a closer look, and we'll measure it out for you as we zoom in. Turns out, where was he? About 120 miles to the east of the Afghanistan border. Waziristan, one of the places, the tribal regions where it was said so often, Osama bin Laden's probably hiding here. Instead, no. 120 miles to the east, 30 miles north of Islamabad. And let's take a closer look at this town, Abbottabad. We'll take a closer look as we come in, and you see somewhere in the ballpark of 1 million people. You see it's pretty highly developed here. A lot of tight, very closely in residential areas. You come up here and you look up here, a lot of educational institutions here. I want to bring you in on a location here. This is where we are told tonight, somewhere right in this area here, people are saying is where this played out. You see a large complex here. You see other large complexes here. You see a lot of building here, walled-off areas, residential complexes within, walled-off, big complex here. And then Chris Lawrence was just saying they were worried about civilian casualties because of other development around. This is one of the places we are told to look tonight. We don't have an exact location yet, but this is the area. And I want to just shrink this down a little bit and just show you again, bring up the terrain of this town. It's in a mountain valley. You see around here, around the outskirts, there are mountains around the outskirts. You come into a valley. It's a city of about 1 million people. Again, just look at this highly dense population up in here, Wolf. But as we look into this here, not in the mountains, not in Afghanistan, not in a cave in Waziristan, but in a very highly developed, highly populated area, we are told, is where this special operation played out. It'll be fascinating to get more of the details on just how they did this, but you can see right in here, if the SEALs went into an area like this, what a high-stakes, high-risk operation to try to capture and ultimately to kill Osama bin Laden.
And if they go in by helicopter, they come down on ropes from the helicopter, you can only imagine how vulnerable those Navy SEALs might have been. John, go back and show us the big picture, because I want our viewers to get a sense of how far from the Afghan border, and the U.S. has a lot of military personnel, more than 100,000 troops in Afghanistan right now. If those helicopters did in fact come from a U.S. base in Afghanistan, they would have had a nice journey there. Give us the big picture once again.
Absolutely. U.S. military installations on this side of the border in Afghanistan, again, for the past 10 years, as we have asked the question of presidents, of CIA directors, of anybody in the United States government, and of people in the Afghan and Pakistan governments, where is Osama bin Laden? The answer has usually been somewhere in this ballpark here. U.S. military installations here. You mentioned 100,000 plus troops. The president himself, and we are now told by sources, launching this operation, not telling the government of Pakistan, only telling them after the operation took place. U.S. bases here coming across the border. And again, let's measure out exactly what we're talking about. As you watch, you zoom in here, and you come off, and then we hit the measure, and you see exactly where we're talking about. 120 miles, once they came over the border, Wolf, 120 miles in. You're 30 miles north of the capital of Pakistan. Right in here, this takes out again. For years, we have focused over here, the tribal areas, the cave areas, the ungovernable areas of Pakistan. But instead, it turns out Osama bin Laden was living in a large city. This is not a suburb. This is a city of about 100,000, I'm sorry, of about 1 million people when you come into it here. And you come in and you see how densely populated it is. A very different kind of operation that for years people have talked about, finding bin Laden in a cave, finding bin Laden in a remote area, finding bin Laden protected by tribes up in the hills. No, in fact, it turns out bin Laden was hiding in a very densely populated area. And again, we are told to look at a complex something like this, somewhere in this ballpark over here, we are told tonight, one of the focus of the operations. And you can see some of the walls, you can see large spaces, but you can also see all around it, densely populated areas, which shows you the risks that any of the elite forces that went in looking for him, not only risks of the firefight that we know took place, but risks of civilian casualties. And again, a very bold decision by the President of the United States to launch this operation and tell the Pakistani government after the fact that U.S. Special Forces were right here on the ground, Wolf.